The battle-scarred plains of Zereth Prime stretched endlessly under twin suns, their blinding light reflecting off jagged crystalline formations scattered across the landscape. The air shimmered with heat, and the occasional gust of wind carried a fine, metallic dust that stung exposed skin. From a distance, a figure moved with confident, almost predatory grace. Her name was Lyra, a warrior from the Xelari Dominion, and she believed herself invincible. Lyra's species was renowned across multiple star systems for their combat prowess. Tall, muscular, and lithe, with 4 arms each capable of wielding deadly energy blades, Xelari warriors were feared as merciless hunters. Lyra had spent centuries honing her skills in the Dominion's gladiatorial arenas and battlefield campaigns. Her record was flawless. She had never lost a duel. Never. She had tracked her target for days, a human operative named Marcus Cade, who had been interfering with Xelari operations on the fringe colonies. Intelligence reports labeled him as a rogue mercenary, but Lyra, confident in her abilities, considered him nothing more than prey. "I will end this quickly," she whispered to herself, flexing her 4 hands around her weapons. "A single strike. That is all he needs." Lyra descended from the crystalline ridge to the open plains below. The human was there, tall, broad-shouldered, and surprisingly calm, even in the harsh sunlight. He stood with his back straight, his hands empty, yet there was a palpable aura of readiness about him, a quiet confidence that unsettled Lyra for just a fraction of a second. "Marcus Cade," Lyra called, her voice carrying across the plains. "Your interference ends today. Prepare yourself." Marcus's expression remained neutral. "I was hoping it wouldn't come to this," he said evenly. "But if you insist." Lyra lunged first, her 4 arms spinning in a deadly blur as she unleashed a flurry of strikes. The air sizzled with the energy blades she wielded, each strike calculated to anticipate and exploit any human weakness. Yet Marcus didn't move as expected. Instead, he shifted slightly, the movement minimal but precise. Every strike she delivered met only air. Her eyes narrowed. "How are you evading me?" Marcus tilted his head. "I'm just not moving like you expect me to." Lyra's pride surged. No human had ever dodged her attacks so effortlessly. She adjusted her strategy, combining multiple strikes into a fluid, swirling dance meant to overwhelm. She forced him backward, cutting through the metallic dust, expecting a cry of pain. There was none. Marcus finally raised his hands, not to block, but to grasp. His technique was unconventional, seemingly random, yet each movement met hers with uncanny timing. He didn't counterattack aggressively, but he didn't need to. Lyra's own momentum began to betray her. She felt a sting in her side as one of her energy blades collided with a rock she hadn't noticed, the backlash sending a jolt up her arm. "Impossible," she growled. "No human could move like that." "You underestimate us," Marcus said calmly. "We adapt. We learn." Lyra's confidence wavered for the first time in her life. She had always relied on her speed, strength, and technique. But this human, this single human, was matching her at every turn. The fight dragged on, both combatants testing each other's limits. Lyra's strikes grew more desperate, her rhythm less predictable. Marcus remained calm, reading her patterns, exploiting every minor mistake without overcommitting. Sweat and dust coated Lyra's body, but she refused to yield. Finally, she feinted a strike and attempted a sudden sweep aimed at Marcus's legs, a tactic she had never needed before. Marcus didn't even flinch. Instead, he stepped into her strike, grasped her wrist, and with a fluid motion, used her own momentum to hurl her across the plain. Lyra hit the ground hard, pain radiating through her side. She struggled to rise, fury and disbelief burning in her chest. She had miscalculated. She had assumed humans were weak, predictable, and inferior. Yet here she was, bruised, humiliated, and on the defensive. Marcus approached slowly, his gaze steady. "I don't want to hurt you," he said. "But I will defend myself." Lyra's pride screamed at her to attack, but something in Marcus's calm demeanor forced her to pause. There was no arrogance, no fear, just control. She realized, with a mixture of frustration and awe, that she had underestimated the human mind. His body was strong, but it was his strategy, his adaptability, and his intuition that made him lethal. She lunged again, harder this time, her attacks a storm of calculated fury. But Marcus didn't strike back, he didn't need to. Each dodge, each block, each shift in stance pushed Lyra further into exhaustion. Sweat dripped from her brow, mixing with the metallic dust, stinging her eyes. Her forearms felt like lead. Then Marcus moved in a blur. He grabbed her arm mid-swing, twisted, and threw her to the ground. Before she could recover, he pinned her lightly, his strength sufficient to hold her without excessive force. Lyra struggled, but it was useless. For the first time in her life, she felt fear, not for her life, but for her ego, for the reality that she was not invincible. "Yield," Marcus said softly, his voice steady. "You've fought bravely, but this is over." Lyra's chest heaved. Pride and anger warred with reason. She wanted to strike, to disprove him, to prove that no human could best a Xelari warrior. But she was exhausted, battered, and aware of the truth. Finally, she spoke, her voice trembling with emotion she barely recognized. "I yield." Marcus released her, stepping back. He offered a hand. Lyra looked at it, suspicion flickering across her face. But something in his steady gaze compelled her to accept it. She rose to her feet, unsteady but dignified. "I miscalculated," she admitted, her voice low. "I thought humans were weak, primitive. I was wrong." Marcus nodded. "Strength isn't just muscle and speed. Strategy, adaptability, and the ability to stay calm under pressure, that's what makes a warrior. You learned that today, even if it cost you a little pride." Lyra considered him for a long moment. She expected him to celebrate, to claim victory with arrogance. Instead, he was calm, respectful even. It was alien to her, not just in the sense of being human, but in a moral sense. She realized humans were capable of honor, of restraint, of intelligence that could rival even the most disciplined Xelari mind. "You fight well," she said finally, the tension in her body slowly easing. "Perhaps. I misjudged your species entirely." Marcus allowed a small smile. "And perhaps humans aren't so easy to underestimate after all." The plains were quiet now, save for the faint hiss of the wind over the crystals. Lyra sheathed her blades, her forearms shaking slightly. For the first time, she felt something she hadn't in centuries, humility. It was uncomfortable, but enlightening. "I came here to destroy you," she admitted. "I leave, changed." Marcus nodded. "Good. That's how progress happens. Learning from experience. Learning from each other." Lyra studied him. She was still wary, caution was ingrained in her. But she also felt a spark of curiosity, a desire to understand, to explore this strange resilience and adaptability humans possessed. "Perhaps," she said slowly, "there is more to your kind than my dominion has led me to believe." Marcus inclined his head. "There's always more. That's why we survive. That's why we thrive." Lyra smiled faintly, a rare gesture for a Xelari warrior. She felt respect for Marcus, a deep and grudging admiration. Not as a prey or a rival, but as a fellow warrior. Days later, the reports from the Xelari Dominion arrived. Lyra's failure to capture or eliminate the human operative was met with shock and disbelief. Many expected her to fabricate a story, to claim some technical failure. But she reported the truth, that a human had bested her in combat, not through brute strength, but through intelligence, adaptability, and calm resolve. The council was outraged, yet Lyra's testimony planted a seed of doubt. For centuries, they had viewed humans as a weak, insignificant species. Now, their perception was challenged by one warrior's experience. Lyra didn't return to her previous life immediately. Instead, she requested permission to study human tactics, human psychology, and their unique approaches to warfare. She wanted to understand the species that had humbled her, that had shown her that victory wasn't guaranteed by might alone. Marcus, meanwhile, returned to his missions, carrying the memory of the battle with him. He had fought many opponents, but Lyra had left a lasting impression, an opponent who had expected to dominate, only to learn that assumptions could be fatal. Months later, they met again, this time not as enemies, but as allies. The threat on Xereth Prime had not ended, but now they fought side by side, combining human ingenuity with Xelari strength. Together, they became an unstoppable force, each learning from the other, each respecting the other's abilities. Lyra never forgot the lesson she had learned on that scorching plain: arrogance is a weakness, and no matter how skilled, one must never underestimate an opponent. Marcus never forgot the warrior who had challenged him, forcing him to innovate, to adapt, to push beyond his limits. In time, stories of the human and the Xelari warrior spread across star systems, not as a tale of conquest, but as a tale of respect, of understanding, and of the unpredictable power of collaboration. Lyra often thought back to the moment she realized she had been wrong. It had been painful, humbling, and disorienting. Yet it had changed her, reshaped her understanding of strength, and ultimately, it had made her a better warrior, and perhaps, in some small way, a better being. In the vast cosmos, where empires clashed and species competed, it was not always the strongest who survived. Sometimes, it was the one who learned, adapted, and respected the unexpected power of others. And in that lesson, Lyra found a truth she would carry forever: victory was never about arrogance. It was about understanding, and sometimes, the greatest victories came not from defeating an enemy, but from recognizing their worth.